meet those needs. And God, we lift up our children tonight and the young people, God, that downstairs. Just let it be the best ever time. God, just their hearts touch. And God, and just to come to believe in Jesus. And Lord, again, thank you so much, Lord, for all these things. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, y'all, I think we're on page 90. And we're going through, there's actually, he brings out about 6 different myths. But anyway, I just kind of curious, y'all picked up on any of this pretty good? Or I actually thought we might go back, but we ain't going to have time tonight to do it. So I was going to go back and kind of review some of the myths, then catch back up. But I think we'll finish up and then maybe just go from there. But we're on myth number 5. This is going to be a challenge for us to kind of figure out what he's saying. This is not as, I'll just say for me, it wasn't quite as easy to pick up on. Maybe what all he's saying, but I got maybe part of it. I hope I'm understanding what he's saying altogether. But anyway, we're looking at page, again, 90 on myth number 5. It says, after several sections, she revealed some information to the doctor to help explain her years of anger. She told about her having a younger sister whose problems seemed worse than her own. She said her sister's 8 years younger, and she had has had it rough. She said, our dad died when I was already married and out of the house, but she was only 14. The dad had been the disciplinarian, so when he was gone, the sister went wild. She went through numerous drug treatment programs. She's had 2 abortions. And she said, I bet she couldn't even count the number of men that she slept with. It's a pity to see how her life has unfolded. And so the doctor said, well, how does this affect you? And she said, well, it naturally holds me down. Every time I'm with her, I'm reminded of how small my problems really are. At least I have my health and I have friends and a decent job, but she has nothing. Well, the doctor said, well, I perceive that you feel guilty for your sister's problems. Okay. She said, sometimes I really do. I've always felt that I should have been a better role model for her, but instead I've been preoccupied with my own distractions. I've been consumed with myself. I never took the time to talk with her like a big sister should. Then the doctor picked up on something. He says, could I assume if you begin to living a happy life, contented life, it would almost seem that you have abandoned Pamela. So this is where it gets kind of, see what we're picking up on. See, I'd like to hear what y'all think on this, what you're getting out of it. It says, in a strange way, I would feel selfish. How can I feel right about being happy when she is in such misery? And he says it is common to express emotions as dictated by the norms of a group, such as a family, church, workplace, or one's social circle. Almost subconsciously, we put out sensors to determine what others are feeling. Then we resolve to maintain our own emotions consistent with those of the group. This explains why it's easy to swap complaint for complaint or to respond to a funny story with a funny story. I don't want to go too fast. Let's think about what he's saying. So y'all help me out a little bit. What y'all getting out of this? Or should I read a little bit more? Maybe it's give you a little more insight. Because he said, let me read a little more. Maybe this will help. As noble as her loyalty was to her sister, she had allowed herself to be unnecessarily weighed down by outside pressures. She accepted the myth that her own happiness would be harmful to Pamela. The doctor helped her understand that all of us are responsible for rising above our own anger-producing circumstances, even if others choose to remain in their own problems. And he helped her to see how she could show empathy for her sister's struggle while enjoying success in resolving her own problems. So I know this is a little deep, but I'll give you a moment to think on it, see what you think is going on here. Because, I mean, you know, apparently what I get out of some of it is that she kind of like with her sister, she's kind of like, yeah, I think people pull you down sometimes. I think you'd be around some people, if you're not careful, they they're angry how things have turned out in life. And I think that's, I don't know, that's what I kind of get out of it a little bit, you know, or if we're not careful, they pull us into it. And we might be, like he said, like her sister, you know, done all this stuff, but she's blaming herself for her sister, somewhat herself, not altogether, but some of it her own problem for not being there for her sister. I've had people to do me, if I relate to it, I've had people to do me that way. You know, they'll look at you and they're going through a lot of problems. They're having a pity party. A lot of times people have a pity party. That's what I pick up on. And they want me to kind of, I don't know, they'll make statements how I know they're having a pity party because they'll say, well, you ain't never had nothing like that to deal with. You know, trying to make me feel guilty because I'm not, you know, in the same mess that they are. And some of the stuff people bring on their own self, and they are, everybody, like Corey said there, everybody's responsible for their dealing with their own anger issues and stuff like that. So y'all help me out a little bit. I don't know if it's a little bit deeper, a little bit harder.
It is harder. So we had two boys that grew up a pretty good life, and then all of a sudden they got to that drinking and doping, and it about killed us. You know, and they'd come home arguing and fighting and cussing, and we would just say, no, wait a minute, you know, don't start that. And finally, you know, we'd say, well, go to bed, you know, or do whatever. Of course, the wife then, what are we going to do? You know, how do we take care of this? All you can do is pray about it, right? I kid you not. I mean, it hurts, and the anger's there. All you can do is just walk with them and try to explain to them what they're doing to their lives.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what else to do.
yeah, I get with you. I think that's part of it. And what he's saying, I'm trying to connect with him, you know, how she could feel guilty. Or, you know, he was saying when you're in a group with people, and if they're complaining, they kind of have a way of bringing you into it too, like, you know, or like he's saying, you know, sometimes our emotions, he says we put out sensors like we want to test everybody, you know, where everybody's kind of down. I don't want to be down because everybody else is down. That's what I'm picking up on. Or other people angry about a situation. Well, I may not be angry about that situation. You know what I mean? Or people may have it hard. I'm sorry that they have it hard. But that don't mean I think I have to be, I don't know. What y'all think on this? What do you think he's saying?
Well, you have to sympathize with other people because you have to know what they're feeling in order to help. But you can't let it drag you down. Because some people just want to be miserable and they want to drag you down with them. Sad to say, but some people just...
Misery loves company, as I always say. What do y'all think? I don't know. I'm digging myself, so I'm not asking to see what y'all think he's trying to say here.
You know what, I was a family.
Okay.
So I wonder how she could have felt about her sister. I personally thought I could never, ever live up to my sister's standards.
Okay.
Felt like she was the perfect one.
Okay.
So I carried a lot of anger. Felt like, what good would it do for me to change now? I'm never gonna live up to how holy she is and how, that's the way I felt. I just felt like we'll never live up to that, so why try to change? Why try to do better? I'm never gonna be that good. The sister that never drank, never smoked, never done anything, never went anywhere. And then I was all the way boxed in the scale. I never tried to change back in the younger days because I just thought, then I'm good. I'm never gonna be good enough. That's the way I felt. Why try to change? I'm not gonna be good enough. Mom and Daddy still think she's the angel of the family, so I'll just continue to be the black sheep.
So you're on the other side of the scenario, being the
So I think
the
that
Pamela.
maybe that's the way Pamela felt. Nobody's got her side of the story. I bet she had a lot of anger too.
Undoubtedly, she did. Undoubtedly, she really did, because, you know,
I mean, that might not be what you want to hear, but I just thought,
no, I really, maybe we just have to, I'm really trying to understand, because I think I understand what he's saying to some degree. All I can relate to is that I see some people where they, again, misery loves company, and you get around some people and all they can do is, they're angry about this, angry about that, and they want me to agree with them. I can't agree with them. They're having a lot of problems.
they want you to take sides.
Yeah, I guess they want me to they want to bring me down instead of them being, maybe finding a way to get over what they're dealing with. They're kind of like, and I don't want a guilt trip on me because I'm sorry bad things happen to you, and I don't mind helping what I can, but I don't want to. I can't answer for everybody. I know everybody's got to answer for themselves. I think what he was saying about this sister, though, she couldn't be happy because she felt like somehow or another being happy was like he said here. What he said again, somehow letting her down. How did he say it? She felt like she couldn't really have the happiness she could because of her sister's miseries. She couldn't get over her anger because she's kind of like, well, I should have been a big sister. Maybe I could have helped her out more. And now she's feeling guilty. So that's making her hold on to some anger. And as long as her sister's living like that, she ain't going to be able to deal with that. The myth is, I don't deserve to be happy. That's what she thinks. Somehow I let my sister down, so I don't deserve. I need to kind of live with their sorrow and her misery somewhat. I need to, does that make sense? Like, she's misery and I didn't help her, so somehow or another I got to be somewhat miserable about it too. That's what I'm picking up on it. And, but again, he says it keeps her stuck. She can't get out of her anger, so to speak, because she don't feel like she can really be a truly happy, contented person. As long as her sister is, she feels to some part blamed for her sister's actions, and the kind of actions that her sister took, it's got her, like you said, in a lifestyle that's going to produce nothing but problems. So that's going to be a miserable life. That's how I kind of picked up on it.
I think we've all been through it.
Okay.
Really, you look back at your life, you have arguments with kids and parents and everything. I don't see the moral of the story. I don't see how do you, what are we getting at?
Well, the whole thing is this Cindy, here's her name, is having trouble getting over the anger because something inside of her is connected with her sister. And she's kind of blaming herself. Guilt. She's blaming herself for not, maybe she could have helped her sister, been a bigger sister. Maybe she could have that took some action, whatever, and she wouldn't have got into all that. So now her sister's got a lifestyle that's miserable, and she blames herself partly for that. So she can't be happy enough. She's going to have to, I guess she feels like she don't deserve to be happy. She feels like she deserves to that punishment being miserable with her sister.
Well, that's the life she brought on. I don't know how the other sister should feel that bad. Because all she can do is try to lead her down the right path that she chooses not to. You can't bang your head against the wall over something like that.
Well, that's it. You know, here she was a little 8 years older. Is that what she said? And okay, and she got married. Well, you know, she left home. She left her. That's where I picked up on. I've seen that happen a lot. You know, especially when you got two sisters like that. And then the daddy was a disciplinarian, but when he died, I guess there wasn't nobody there for her to correct her. And so the sister was so busy with her own life. Well, you know, her sister had 3 bad marriages. We can't forget that scenario. You know, so she's had kind of a 3 bad guys to come into her life, and, you know, done 3 times losing out on marriage. So, you know, you can see where she's probably thinking, well, I was so caught up in my own little problems, I didn't have time for my sister. So she don't feel like she deserves to be happy. And what that's doing is keeping her, that myth is keeping her from getting free from her anger. It's going to continue to be a feed. So what she's got to learn is how to deal with it, like you're talking about. How can she needs to know she can empathize with her sister, but not feel guilty about, okay, my life is better than yours, you know, and all that kind of stuff, you know. And I like what he said. He said, we're all responsible for rising above our own anger-producing circumstances. We're all responsible for ourselves to come out of that. You know, I can't make nobody do anything. I mean, I can be there and I can empathize. I'm sorry that when they make bad decisions, and it hurts when you see that happen. And you realize, but if you ain't careful, you get in your mind, well, maybe if I'd have done this or maybe I'd have done that. Well, maybe, but really the responsibility fell on herself, you know, to do that. I don't think he's saying don't care. I know he's saying care. I think he says don't let it pull you under. Don't let people, bad decision, put a guilt trip on you and pull you down. You know, just because your life is, you made better choices, and maybe things are better than somebody who's made a bunch of bad choices. That don't mean we don't care. It just means you don't pull down. That's what I get out of it. I don't know. And I think that's what he's trying to get her to do. I think I read that in there too, because, you know, as long as she stays in the misery herself, she's not going to ever pull her sister up. She needs to have a lot, if nothing else, overcome her anger issues, like you said, because you can better help her sister. I keep thinking about it like this. You get around a certain person, they're always miserable. Well, you just go along with them, and you got tough and all that, kind of stuff, and you're trying to. I don't know if I'm saying this good or not, but really, people, you can't help somebody else up if you're down yourself. You need to keep your own. How can I help somebody else with their anger issues if I'm letting mine be out of control? I think that's part of what you're saying too, Aunt Matthew. She needs to do it for herself so that if she helps herself, she can be able to help others. I agree with that statement. Yeah.
I think this happens a lot more in families than people realize. That there's, especially when it's 2 siblings.
Yeah. I do too.
She remarried early, left home. I was 13. So, she was involved in church. Every year she done vacation Bible school.
Yep.
She done all the good, right things. I did right opposite. Don't know why it went that way, but I think part of me was rebellion. I was the baby. Mom and Daddy was determined to make me the good, right child like Sherry, and I wouldn't have it. But I paid for it a lot.
Yeah.
Sin's fun. If it wasn't fun, nobody would sin. But you pay for it. You reap what you sow.
Yeah. It's going to cost you more.
It'll cost you more than fun.
Yep.
I promise you that.
And there's a way to,
You need to come talk to me.
and there's a way, I think there's,
Write a 50-page book.
Yeah, I could write a novel.
yeah,
I wouldn't want to, but I could.
You know,
yeah.
I don't want everybody to know, but
And I do think there's a way,
everybody gonna know but me and God.
there's a way to empathize with people without feeling like you had to get miserable too with them, you know.
Let me throw this in.
Okay.
I had a praying grandmother and a praying mom and daddy. And that's where it goes back to raise your kids in church. I'm telling you, I took the wrong path, but I came back. If I hadn't had all them prayers, and my parents made me and kept me in church, even when I went kicking and screaming,
Yeah.
I believe with all my heart I would not be here today.
I hear you.
Like me, I was raised up in church. When I turned my teenage years, I veered off way left, and well, my whole family did. And it's sad, but I'm the only one back in the church and doing right. But
Yeah, and when you start doing right, good things going to follow.
oh, for sure.
And I've heard people say, "Well, you think you're better than I am," or, I've heard that statement a lot. Because now you go in church and you do this and that, and you think you're a lot better than me or something. Trying to put a guilt trip on you, really, in a way, Trying to put their guilt on you, I guess.
I was a reader of that word. And when you got through, you went out inside the other program or whatever, a lot of people have tried to word it. What are you talking about? I'm like, no, I'm getting better at listening.
Yeah, yeah. People want to pull you down with them. They really do.
And that's one thing Megan's also told me. She's like, watch who your friends are. And I hung around the wrong friends, the wrong crowd, and got a bunch of trouble. It's cost me a lot more money than anything.
Yeah. I always heard that, stuff people. Well, some of the guys in prison we go to and everything, they're a lot of them, they don't ever ask me, maybe just once or twice out of 30-something years, maybe once or twice that somebody's asked me to pray that they'll get out. But most time, the ones that are going on parole, they'll pray for me. And we want God's will. But their greatest concern is that when they get out, they won't get back into what they were doing. When they go back home and get around some of the same old people and stuff, that they don't fall back into the same old mess they were in before. I've had that many more times than I can number.
That's what they tell you inside rehab. They say if you go back to the same place, the same. I mean, it's like a. I want to say rehab's a bad thing for people. I mean, you learn a lot. If you've been on drugs and you went around drinking or stuff like that. It's just. Like, that's what they told me when I was in rehab. It was like, you go back to where you are, and I was like, I don't need to go back to Clark County. I don't need to go back. And then my mom was like, you can't really learn from it. And I was worried about all my friends and stuff. Ain't nothing happened since I've been back. I just been going to work, doing the same thing.
Praise the Lord. I'm glad it's working out. I really am. Yeah. It can work out. I think God can make anything happen. I really do. But that's what he's doing with it. Again, he talks about you know, I'd say I'm on page 92. He's got a little paragraph there where he says, we need not feel compelled to take responsibility for others' problems, nor do we have to be sojourners with them in their misery. Instead, we can view our efforts at managing our anger as a responsible contribution to the well-being of those who play important roles in our lives. To kind of go back to what you're saying, yeah, if I work on my anger, get my life happy, then hopefully it will show and maybe encourage them, maybe show them there is some hope, you know. But I agree with that. I really do agree with that. I don't know if I understand every implication he's saying here, but I do see where that can, people love to pull you down. And but people got, each of us are responsible. That's what he's saying. Everybody's responsible for their own overcoming their anger circumstances, you know, producing circumstances. Somewhere or another, we have to. You can't keep riding somebody else's, you know, some part responsibility. Probably one of the things I keep coming to my mind too is like, I hear people want to blame someone else for why they made bad choices, you know. Always, you know, instead of taking responsibility for it, they don't do that. A lot of times they want to blame somebody. Well, if I had this, or if I had that, if that hadn't happened, or if, you know, that person, whatever, you know, maybe I wouldn't have turned, you know. Yeah, it is. It is. And you don't get nowhere. You won't never move until you take personal responsibility. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. And this is really interesting. I don't think it's as hard to get it, but it makes a very good point. He said there's nothing to look forward to anymore. Okay? And he starts out by talking about momentum. You know, especially he used the idea of athletics, like a team is used to winning. You know, they kind of got like a momentum. It's just something about it, you know. They got that positive, we're winners and we keep winning, and it's kind of like a mindset, if you will. Or, again, sometimes people have it, I'll never win, I always lose, I'm always the one that's going to, it ain't going to never happen, whatever. It's kind of like he talks about the word, it really becomes like a pattern or a habit that they get into. And he's talking about the same mindset can work in anger management. When people have a pattern of irritations and irritability, I get that. It's easy for them to conclude that the future will be no different. Angry people can be so tied to their anger pattern that they falsely conclude that corrective efforts would only be futile. In other words, look at my record. you know, it's going to happen. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to, I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to lose control again. I've heard people talk about their anger, and I've seen one particular person come to my mind and just said, well, that's just who I am. No, that's who you allow yourself to be. You didn't develop a pattern. And he's going to use the word habit. And so because of this, we have that outlook, like he's talking about, nothing to look forward to anymore. And let's look at page 93. You'll see some of this. This lady is talking to the doctor, right? And he says, the doctor tells her, I'm convinced that you have the capacity to make better choices when your anger rises. But you need to believe this too. Okay, so she's having trouble believing that. And so she says, well, don't you think the best indicator of my future potential is my past failures? See how she's doing? She's letting her past dictate to her that this is what it's always going to be. So she's stuck in it. Because I made so many mistakes, I can't afford to be optimistic. So the doctor, I like what his response was. He said, you know, if I spoke as pessimistically to you as you speak to yourself, you would fire me. I like that statement. He said, you've fallen into the habit of letting yourself remain angry. If I didn't do nothing else tonight, that one statement would be enough for us to chew on. The habit of letting yourself remain angry. Yet your presence here in my office tells me you're ready for improvement. And again, he said, besides, you can tell the most about people, not by the mistakes they make, but by the way they respond to those mistakes. What do you think on that? You can tell more about the people, not by the mistakes they make, but by the way they respond to those mistakes. I taught the woodworking class down there at the Crockett Christian School for a little while. And I kept telling them all the time, I would tell them this real often. I said, the difference between a good carpenter and a not so good carpenter is not that they don't make mistakes or blunders or miscuts or whatever, but the good carpenter knows how to fix what he messes up. And the one not so good either don't take the time to fix it or don't know how to fix it. So I think that's what he's saying here. That's what I kind of get out of it. It's everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's got something in our life probably that we regret. That's what I get out of it. But what do you do with that? What do you do with it? Apparently, she's stuck in it. That's what that's what he's saying. She's developed a habit to be with her anger and responses of her anger. Again, she's stuck in that rut. She just don't think she could ever get out of it. And he's trying to tell her, yes, you can. That's basically the whole point of this particular one. You can do something about it. Okay? So he asked the question, so how are you responding to your past frustrations? Do you assume they merely foreshadow more anger, or do you look at your difficulties as opportunities to grow? So I think we all say amen to that. Somebody says things that happen to us could be either stepping stones or stumbling blocks. And so we can take whatever's happened in our life, good and bad, and it can lead to good things if we have that mindset that they can happen. And again, he used Philippians 3:13 and 14, where Paul talks about how forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth to those things which are ahead. He says, I press toward the goal for the prize of the high call or the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. So according to him, Paul is saying, I'm forgetting. Now, in context, I'm going to just say he don't bring that out, but I think he's right. I think he's in what he's doing and working with it is just as good. But Paul's problem wasn't so much the mistakes he made. It's that how the stuff that he had going for himself personally. He was a Hebrew of the Hebrew. He was a well-respected. He was up there in his category as far as a rabbi or a teacher in the Jewish things. He had all this stuff, but it was keeping him from knowing Christ. And that's what he was talking about. So even some of the stuff that we got in our life that we kind of, our little blue medals and all our little things that we think we're all this and bag of chips or whatever, sometimes that can get in the way from us truly knowing the Lord too. But according to this person here, he's telling that, people can move past their past. You can get past their past. You can use this for a stepping stone. This is, I'm talking, y'all can talk too on this.
You can always help somebody else the more you feed them.
You can take what you've been through and use it to help someone.
You can always tell them that one time she said, I've never
I do too. Probably when I got into this book, how I got into this book, I was struggling, didn't know what I was struggling. And I was praying one day about it. I actually was over Tommy Morgan's building cabinets when I was praying about this. And what the weirdest thing was going on. I was pastoring a church, but every negative thing that people would say and do and all that, it was like it tormented my mind. It seemed like if I ever got my mind free from having to work or figure out something, it was just kind of floating, I guess you call it. All that negative stuff was just, and hearing the people saying it and trying to fix all the problems and everything else, it just went over and over. Every time somebody says something to me, and some people say some stuff that wasn't good and kind, that's for sure. I try to do the Christian pastor thing. I don't respond in kind. I was trying to overcome that, but it was still playing in my head. And I didn't know what all that was, and I was praying about it, and that's when I came up that I had anger and didn't know I had a lot of anger issues. So that's what led me to this book. I didn't know this book was even out there. I just began to pray about it, and I guess, good Lord, let me find this because it's been a big help to me. But I guess what I'm trying to say, this particular one here, it just tells me you can overcome these things. Your anger, I could have sat there and just kept on living like I was, or I felt like God gave me the grace to say, no, I choose not to be this way. So I've been mornings I woke up before thinking, why do I have to wake up in a negative mood? What law is there in my mind that tells me when I wake up that I got to be grouchy or looking down about the day or how hard things are going to be and sweat, just letting it go in my head? Why couldn't I wake up in the morning and be happy and thank God that I'm alive and thank God that, I got a place over my roof over my head and, a lot of blessings. And what I guess I'm saying is I had to kind of like realize I could overcome these anger. I can manage my anger instead of my anger manage me. And again, I'm still on a journey. I'm still finding out some ways in my life. The anger I've learned some angry habits. I really have. And sometimes I don't know until something triggers it. And I respond in something in a way I think, why did I respond that way? That wasn't a good response. If I was put myself in the person's shoes that was listening to me, I wouldn't have thought too much of myself. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have thought too much of it. Or I wouldn't even like the way I was being taught to. So I'm saying I'm still on a journey realizing, there's some things I need to get out of the habit, and I can. I think that's what this whole lesson, this whole point here on Myth 6 is. We can overcome it. But we have learned habits. And that's what he kept saying here. You says, you've let yourself, you have fallen into a habit of letting yourself remain angry. And we do. We pick out some things, and for some reason we'll sour over something. There's some things in our life, it's kind of like we want to be angry. It's part of it doesn't got so ingrained in us as a part of our personality. Almost, it really has. It's changed and affected our personality and become a part of it. And you don't even know you do it sometimes. You don't even know it. It's such a habit of doing it, I know some people, I hate riding in the car when they're driving. I don't even like to be driving when they're riding with me in the car. But they're a whole lot worse when they're doing the driving. Because every time somebody makes a little bad, and they just going off, like, what do they think they're doing? Why did they do that for? I'm not talking about just once in an hour. I'm not talking about once just in the trip. I'm talking about consistently the whole time. Every little thing that somebody just don't do that they think that they should have done or whatever, or didn't do it to suit them. And I think, Lord, if I could get out of this car, but I was stuck and everything. It's miserable. To me, it's miserable driving with somebody like that.
You really want to know what's inside your body, bump the cup.
Bump the cup. It'll come out, won't it? Yeah, I know it. Need it suddenly too. Oh man. And I don't know. Sometimes I pray. I said, Lord, what is it about me? I seem like I attract people like that. You know what I mean? I'm getting my share or more than everybody else is getting of that kind of thing.
The devil's trying to get us to be like that. He's just telling us all them people in our way. And there's so many people in this world now like that, you know. It's not easy. Not easy.
Mm-mm. Yeah, of course, I look at it, and I do the exam of myself. I really ain't trying to look at them so much. I'm trying to say, Lord, do I do that? You know, do I act like that? Because it is kind of, oh, I better not go there, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't. But anyway, I think about it a whole lot, how that, Lord Jesus. It's like some people can't be happy unless they are angry. You know, something to complain about or whatever. They don't even know what to talk about unless they got something to complain about. And it just wears you out. Yeah, and I want to say to them, like, do y'all really think I enjoy hearing y'all complain? I'm praying, though, Matthew, I'm praying. I said, God, you got me here for a reason, but I can't.
Like I'm around them, a lot of the people like that, 128 of them almost every day. Go to work.
Yeah. What's that? Woo. Yeah. You see, this is what. Yeah, this is what got me on this little journey here in the last couple of weeks. Sissy's asked me what's happened to me. And I said, well, I think I'm going to die, and the Lord wants me to get a few things straightened up before I go. I said, I don't know. But I said, she said, you're being nicer to me, being sweeter, kinder. And I am. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I am intentionally, because I think I'm becoming aware of how I say things to her. And I got to thinking, I said, you think she really enjoys hearing that? Is that really going to help her? Is that going to make the matter? That's going to help make things better if I talk to her that way, you know.
The biggest thing that gets in trouble now. And everything.
Well, even like our kids, you know, I wonder what they think sometimes. I mean, I don't know, 'cause we're grown and everything, and we get aggravated at kids and stuff. Sure we do, you know, and we yell at them and carry on and all that. But I don't know if that's really, we wonder why they're ready to leave home or why they rebel and don't listen to us when we talk. They learn to how to tune us out. knows the buttons.
That's when I start getting upset. I just want to be there.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've had some things too, like, and that kind of things can really get to you. It really can. I guess what I like about this book is it's not telling you anger is wrong. It don't tell you that. What it tells you is how to manage it so that you don't react and do wrong things, let it control your life. It's not controlling you, you're controlling it. That's what this is to help, because everybody's got stuff it's going to produce anger,
When I was like that, they give me different, like my husband. I've been on what you say before. I let what you say. I don't feel like I need to take a pill every morning just to be happy. Like, normally I get happy sometimes.
Yeah, and I believe that. I believe it. I believe God can help us. I know He can, and I think that's what the goal is. If I accept defeat, I'm going to be defeated. But if I believe, in my heart, there've been a lot of times I know the Holy Spirit's led me to a point in my mind said, Lord, it ain't supposed to be this way. But I know it got God, and I'm not supposed to be living a defeated life or the devil just winning. No. I may have a battle. He's going to put up a battle, but we should be overcomers. And I think that's why we go through some things, though. God uses adverse things as well to help us to get to where we need to be, so we can use the negative and the positive. And when we overcome it, like you said, we can help others and stuff, or it helps us to open doors where God can work that maybe no other thing could. We don't know the mind of God. How can we even begin to understand all the ways that God works? But we overcome. That's what keeps coming to mind. God didn't get me saved for me to be defeated, or the devil to win, or nothing like that. I can't accept that. I just can't accept it in my heart that I'm doomed to fail. I'm not. I may have some battles, and I've had some battles I thought, Lord, I don't know. I don't know if I can, but I said, how can I give up? Why do I want to give up? Who's trying to talk me into that? It ain't God telling me to give up. So I realize how the enemy works. But many times when we just hold out with patience and wait upon the Lord, things begin to work out, and get better for us too. But anyway, I relate to this number 6 a whole lot. Getting into a habit of being angry, or a habit of responding in certain situations, circumstances, by getting angry and out of control with that anger. I'm going to go ahead and let's go to the last statement he makes here on page 94. Kind of goes on along with this. But the best way to overcome the myths, or the things that we tell ourselves that ain't true, it's about anchoring, he says, ourselves in truth. And I kind of like, she's kind of, she's letting her life, this particular lady, Cindy, has been letting her life be controlled by the myths that she's believing in her mind and heart. And she needs to learn to challenge those negative things. That's what is a key right there, learning to challenge. Why do I think that way? Why do I respond to anger in that situation the way I'm doing? Challenge yourself. Just like I said, we learn things. We grew up learning things. So we didn't even think about them being wrong or harmful. We just, the way we were brought up, the way we was treated, and it just became a part of our life without being challenged. But I agree with that. I need to challenge some things that ain't, then that's what he's telling her to need to do. Some of the things that these lies or myths that she's believing, she needs to challenge them. And again, she's had some problems. He agrees with that. That has some bad problems. and that could cause frustration. He's not telling her that she should never got frustrated. She's had some real things. He says, I just want you to realize that all your frustrations do not represent the ultimate truth. She says, I know you're right. I've got some old thinking habits that need to be adjusted. I underline that. I've got some old thinking habits that need to be adjusted. So he gives her an analogy and says, suppose, like a child, you mislearn a definition of some word. And for a time, you use those words in the wrong way. Later, you realize your mistake as you discover the correct definition. He said, once you do, you would be forced to do two things. First, you would have to recognize the wrong definitions and exchange them for the correct ones. Second, you would need to restructure your thoughts so you would speak the words correctly. So she said, you're suggesting my experience have given me a false impression of real truth. And that's what he's saying. And I need to rearrange my way of thinking. That's what she needs to do. Rearrange her thinking according to truth. And basically, the Bible is the truth, and that's what we need to really lean on it when it comes to examining ourselves. But I want you to see two things he said about that definition. Once you learn something is wrong, you got to make the correction. You know, you use the word wrong. Like he said, a definition of a word. Well, you got the wrong thought. You think this is the way things really are. You're telling yourself something that's not true. You've learned to do that. So now that you realize that's wrong, you got to correct that by the truth. Here's the hard part. I think number 2 is harder than number 1. Because number 2 then, you got to adjust. He said you need to restructure your thoughts so you would speak the words correctly. And that's what I found the challenge. Once I made that adjustment, it's found out how am I supposed to respond. I responded to somebody called me a name with anger. So I said, I never have nothing else to do with them. Well, I learned that wasn't right. So now I changed that, but I don't know how to respond to that. You see what I'm saying? So now that I got the negative out of the way, I need to discover the positive and how to apply it. And I found that to be more challenging than the first part because it's like you're starting all over again. You're starting anew and afresh with all this going on. I'll give you my best example. And y'all know how I feel about the Christmas stuff. So, yeah, it was bad back then. But one of the things I learned about myself was my biggest problem wasn't the people that didn't agree with me. My biggest problem was, how do I serve the Lord at Christmas time now? I don't have Santa Claus. I believe that's wrong. I don't have the Christmas tree. I don't have all that stuff because it's all out for me now. Now I find myself and I realize I was so caught up in that life or those thoughts and ways, I didn't realize I really didn't know how to celebrate Christmas as spiritual as I needed to know how. It challenged me a whole lot. So what do you do now when you don't sit around for a tree and waiting for Santa Claus to come? You know what I mean? How many songs you don't sing no more? How do you celebrate Christ's birthday? What does it really mean? You know, what are ways that I could really say that I worshiped God and honored him at Christmas time? I'm not saying I got all the answers, but all I said was that was my journey. Now that I got the wrong out and figure out what the right was, now I got a whole new life to learn how. And that's what we do when we get anger. Once you quit responding to certain things, with anger, you realize, no, that wasn't the correct way of doing it. Now what do I do? You know, like talking about being like kinder to Sissy. Okay, you know, well, what does that look like? You know, yeah, I speak a little bit like I would the normal church folks. That's what Sissy always told me. She said, why don't you talk to me like you talk to the people up there at church? That always got me. That always gigged me a little bit. I was like, okay, I get your point, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So I said, well, one of the things I had to learn positive was how could I speak to her? And then I found out being kind, I'm really kind of got to think about, all right, there's some things I just need to, I don't need to be so heavy. I don't need to be so stressed out. Like you're talking about my frustrations, you're talking about Ryan and bring out your frustration on him. I don't need to bring my frustrations out on her. You know, and I don't, one of the big lessons we learn in this book, I got to stop, but one of the big lessons we learn about controlling, that hit home with me this time when we went through it. It really hit home. And I got to thinking about, I got some control issues too, hadn't I, Lord? I got to get that because that's caused me a lot of frustration at home too with Sissy. So I found out I'm having to relearn what the correct things, what that looks like now, living it out in the right way instead of living out in the other way. So that's my example. I don't know if y'all, I hope I made it about as clear enough to get something out of it. Anyway, kind of funny in a way, you know, once you start learning. And I always told people this when I would train people. I work with people and I train them in jobs and stuff. And I should have paid attention to my own advice. I would always tell them, I said, it's a whole lot better to learn to do the right way first time. Because I said, if you ever learn to do it wrong, if you learn it and you learn to do it in the wrong way, them old habits are hard to break. You know, if you learn how to, like when you do carpenter work, if you learn how to measure twice, then cut, you probably won't cut up and make as many bad cuts. You know, there's a lot of stuff. If you learn to do it right, getting good habits to begin with, you can solve a lot of frustrations later. I guess I'm trying to say something. I hope y'all connect with it. I hope I did. I hope y'all got something from it. We got 2 minutes. Clear as mud or more confused? Less confused? More or less. I like that answer. I like middle of the road. I know it. Cece's got that CPAP machine. And when she's fitting right, it's just as quiet. I don't hear nothing. But she can turn her head and that thing will move just a little bit. And it sounds like a blower just moved in the bedroom, you know. And she don't know it. She's out. She don't know what's going on. It's like somebody snoring. She don't know it. I'll punch her a little bit, you know, and she'll stop for a second. I thought, okay, that's all I got to do. About 5 seconds later, it starts right back up again. Finally, I have to say, Sissy, I can't sleep. The thing's going off. And it seems like Saturday night, it goes off more than it does any other night of the week. But anyway, I hope this was helpful to y'all. Matthew, you better go ahead and pray, I guess, before they get us. God bless y'all. Uh-oh, she's happy back there. She's